Hey, hello, friends, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, and today I'm talking to somebody who doesn't just run schools as a district superintendent. He's the systematic guy that transformed just anything average in education to an ecosystem that it many times is award winning, and I can't wait to unpack much of that. Dr. Nathan Schilling, Superintendent, Lansing School District 158. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me.
The conductor. Anybody just call you the conductor? And we're not.
They never have, but I've stood in front of plenty of bands and orchestras.
Yeah, we're not talking like locomotive engines, but you could probably pull that off too. But yeah, the conductor. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you. New school year.
Yeah, I hear staff are back. Students, they've got their lunch stuff figured out. They got the transportation stuff figured out.
Yeah, teachers back on Monday. Kids are back yesterday.
How did the pre-kickoff everything go?
Wonderful. Yeah, really good. Our district theme this year is support. So we did a theme last year of mindfulness for our staff. It was very successful. We ran 2 wellness fairs, one for the staff, one for the community. We brought in therapy dogs. We now have 2 assistant principals who have actually trained their own dogs to be licensed therapy animals. One is actually considered a psychiatric service dog, capable of supporting social emotional health. And then the support theme this year is supposed to build off of the mindfulness we did last year. So looking at more academic interventions, MTSS, that sort of thing.
It's just from that self-awareness angle, and you and I have talked off mic a number of times about how important it is for us to really know who we are. So that mindfulness practice there, but that's not enough. You need to self-manage, right? Self-awareness moves into self-manage, and that's where the supports. I love where you're going with it. Just the developmental model here. I'm not surprised. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You picked me up from the airport a couple of years ago in a muscle car. That car still have some muscles?
It absolutely does. Over 305 of them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's emblematic also. I profile people for a living, and that totally makes sense.
Well, you know what? It's. I think of it kind of like, Batman has his signature Batmobile.
Yeah.
When you're going around the district, you have to be recognizable, even if you're in your signature car. So our SROs, we got 2 school resource officers now, which actually is pretty innovative for an elementary school district.
Yeah.
They have their police vehicles. Everybody knows them, and they know Dr. Schilling by the 2018 blue Dodge Challenger.
As a former school administrator, I was the guy that did not ever want to know the community to know what I was driving. Much of that stemmed from my years as a high school principal, where your car would end up just collecting lots of stuff throughout the day, most of it in good fun. But sometimes it's like, how am I going to get that off? Yeah.
Well, I was a high school principal who lived in the community where he was the principal for 6 years, and not once was that ever an issue with my car. So not my experience with it. But I pretty much wave at every single person that I see, whether it's a crossing guard, whether it's a teacher doing bus duty, whether it's parents waiting to pick up their kids. It's just another way to be visible in some respects, because, as a superintendent, you're everywhere. And, I knew someone once who would have special signature shirts made for himself. He was the principal of Lockport High School. He was my mentor when I was a first-year principal. And he used to have his name embroidered on things, so people would recognize him at everything.
Interesting. So you've got this interesting trinity, this music background, you've got a life science background, you've got a martial arts background. I'm always looking for human interest stories, and dude, you're like the first chapter. I mean, that most superintendents, they don't quite have that mix. Right. So you think about what each of those disciplines brings to your role in leading a large, complex system. What does that music background give you? What does that give you the ability to do?
That's the creativity side of everything. So I'll give you an interesting parallel, though. So Monday, I basically stood up in front of all of our employees, over 300 people. Sometimes I speak in front of 1,000, depending on the context, the audience, if we have parents. Um, but I have a principal who's a little newer who said, Dr. Schilling, I really admire how when you speak in front of staff, it almost comes across as conversational. Like you seem very relaxed, very comfortable. And I turned to her assistant principal and I said, you know what? You know what she could do to develop that skill set? Said, take lessons in jazz improvisation.
Yes.
Because my background, so I'm a saxophone player,
Got it.
and I played saxophone in jazz ensembles all the way through college and graduate school. So my background is in being able to stand on a stage and make it up as I go along. And in jazz improvisation, you're trying to hit certain notes or riffs or little things to go with the chord changes.
Yep.
But in between that, a lot of that's made up. So I've actually had people tell me when you speak, it seems like you're trying to hit on certain things, but it's also very free and conversational. And so that's where that comes from.
I've used the jazz analogy so many times in talking with leaders, but never with an actual practicing jazz musician before. So thank you for just giving some vivid articulation to yes, there's a bit of a score. There is a structure there that must be followed. And you have that on the stage. You know what your mission, you know what your vision, you know what your core objectives are, what you stand for, you know the values of your community, all of that stuff. But in between all of it, there's a ton of freedom. Yeah. And who knows how long this thing is going to last.
Mm-hmm. and you have to be adaptive.
Interesting.
So Dr. Brent Clark is the executive director of the Illinois Association of School Administrators. And I remember way back when I was first interested in becoming a superintendent, I attended one of his breakout sessions at the IASA conference. And he said the superintendency is evolving in a way that where before it was more technical skills, like knowing how to do certain things, the budget, the board presentations, whatever you want to call it, to becoming more adaptive. And so those adaptive skills are even more important than they ever were, considering the learning needs of students post-COVID, the teacher shortage we're dealing with. I mean, just the unpredictability of funding at the federal level. Like, you have to have those adaptive skills. And I would give a lot of credit to that background and training that I have in the musical side of things, to being able to be creative and to kind of adapt on the fly to situations as they change.
Let's put another layer on top of that. Your martial arts background in being able to redirect, right? Redirect maybe conflict, or talk to me a little bit about how that discipline comes into favor in terms of just getting better results day in and day out.
Well, so the interesting thing, I have a black belt in Aikido. And Aikido is a very defensive martial art. It's actually the martial art that was popularized by Steven Seagal. So if you think back to like some of his movies, back in the 90s, he's the guy that stands in the center and there's like a dozen guys form a circle around him, and he never lays the first punch. He never starts anything. But as they come at him, he's throwing them into each other. He's counterattacking. Like, that's Aikido. Aikido is a defensive art. And at its core, it's designed to resolve conflict with a minimum amount of harm to everyone involved, including the person that is starting it and initiating it. And I actually have utilized that in my work as a superintendent. I've used it in resolving conflict. I've used it even in employee discipline situations where you're trying to address an issue, but you're not necessarily wanting to be overly hard on the human being. So there's a saying, be hard on the problem, not the person.
Right.
And so it aligns very similarly to that. And we can show care and compassion for people as human beings while still getting to that place of accountability that you need from the situation at hand. And it's really helped relationally strengthen things in the district, and helped people understand, like, look, people make mistakes. And we're progressive in the way we handle things in terms of discipline and that type of thing. But, you don't have to be overly hard on the human being, especially now. I mean, things are hard enough as it is in the world today in our society.
Yeah, without those two anchors, I think bringing meaning to what we talk about often, in terms of just building the right cultures, of building the support, plus commensurate challenge to continue to see the work strategically progress. But to have those two anchors of, music, jazz, and the martial art of Aikido, that's where the learning comes in. That's where you have crystallized my understanding at a whole nother level. And I'm sure I'll be able to take some of these clips or snips from this discussion and go, oh, I heard Dr. Schilling referred to it as this. So you're also an author. You wrote a book, Every Student Succeeds. And a lot of that book was pulled from the inside of your district, of some of the frameworks that you've created, right, for seeing gaps occlude, not accidentally, but very, very intentionally. Give us a clip, if you will, of that framework and how that has worked towards success for you and your system.
And one thing quick about the Aikido piece we were talking about.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to suggest the other way that you could kind of help crystallize your understanding of it. Feel free to go to an Aikido Association of America dojo and just get on the mat, because it'll become very clear very quickly how it's practiced when you put it into the actual physical martial art. Taught many beginning students in it, and just how someone would normally think you would approach a conflict or a fight. Like, they kind of redirect that mindset even right from the very beginning, way back when you're a white belt.
So let's get specific. You've written a book, okay? You've authored a book while conducting this, big system that you're leading and managing conflict. Tell us a little bit about the book project. Where did the idea come from?
Okay, so the book, we're extremely proud of. But when I say we, I mean myself and my wife, who is Dr. Nicole Schilling, and she is a full professor of educational leadership at St. Bonaventure University in New York.
That's
And
legit.
just
That is
in
legit.
case you were, concerned about the commute, she is fully remote.
Okay.
I do live in the Midwest while I work in the school district here. We both were part of an organization. We were officers in a special interest group for the American Educational Research Association. It's called Research on the Superintendency, SIG 97. And we basically wanted to give voice to superintendents across the country and create something that could categorize and catalog and give voice to their stories, and then be used in a variety of ways, whether it's researchers looking to build off of those stories, whether it's universities looking to give aspiring superintendents applicable case studies to analyze as they're looking to understand this role and prepare for it. So we ended up with a book that's got about a dozen chapters in it. And these are all written by either current or former superintendents across the United States. And we asked that they partner with somebody in higher education, kind of like how my wife and I are partnered as a sitting superintendent and a practicing researcher and professor. And we've got a lot of different voices on a variety of issues, financial things, things related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in one case, a superintendent who actually had to change his entire school district away from a racially offensive mascot. So just fascinating firsthand depictions of legitimate superintendent issues aligned to research, with right now the anticipated publication being March of 2026.
Okay, I was going to say, is there a place that you can direct us to, but not yet? Any pre-sales that you're thinking about doing?
I don't think yet. It's through Emerald Publishing. Anybody who's ever published a book, I've been told that those estimated release dates often get. It's kind of like construction. A lot of times it doesn't really follow that timeline, but we're very excited. We're very excited to do it. And she and I were the editors, so you kind of asked how that works in synergy with the work that I do here. Well, she was the researcher. She assessed the alignment to research. She assessed the application of it to researchers and universities. I'm the practitioner,
Sure.
so I was the one that read those chapters from the lens of how is this relevant to a sitting superintendent? How would this prepare somebody who wants to be a superintendent? And it really worked just very well. And I would be remiss if I didn't give credit here to Dr. Randy Hetherington, He is a sitting professor who was the chair of the SIG 97 group, Research on the Superintendency, when all of this work came about. And he was one of the original people who had expressed interest in this type of a book, and he wrote a chapter for it. So kudos to him as well for his work.
Well, the empowerment that I see on the tail end of this work, empowering leaders to read and just the lateral stories that we can share with each other. It just helps us understand what is actually possible because we can get paralyzed by just oftentimes just the sheer impossibilities of the work. But when we see real live
Mhm.
modeled examples, well done, not quite complete, but well done in terms of just the overall concept and moving forward. So I stood on the stage 2 days ago on a campus and shared with the team that I said, okay, I might get thrown out of here, but I'm going to share publicly that our public education systems are broken. And security wasn't called. Had a lot of people shaking their heads in the room. And I shared some stats of just teacher burnout, the retention issues that we have of both students and teachers in our public systems, but also just the volatility of some of those outside forces. You know, the ambiguity of not always knowing what the consumer is asking for, what our clients are asking for. So, in many ways, traditional public education is being disrupted, right?
Mhm.
We get charters, we've got private options, we've got homeschooling. As you think about your local school district, I use the Netflix disrupting Blockbuster. That story's been, I think, way overused. But which one are you? Are you the Netflix disrupting, or are you the Blockbuster trying to compete with Netflix today? As you look at your system and how you're performing and staying in demand and obviously profitability, all of those things.
I definitely think that the word disruption is appropriate. Disruption more so than being broken. Um, because the thing is, and I could say this for my district, I could say this for many of my colleagues who are superintendents of other great school districts. We are doing our best, and despite being told this year that we were going to lose all of our title grant funding from the federal government, which I can tell you for a fact did significantly disrupt some school districts that then began to do reductions in force and
Right.
remove staff and try to
No
balance
joke.
budgets. We fortunately we're in a healthy financial position, and we've done some construction here. We've renovated and expanded all of our buildings. I actually shared a statistic on Monday that since 2018, when I became the superintendent here, we've actually added 62 full-time positions, and that's anywhere from 25 paraprofessionals to 4 social workers to 6 classroom teachers to an additional technology assistant, more nurses, more occupational therapy staff, all supports for kids. I share this as part of that theme of support.
Right, right.
So we're still moving our system forward, even despite those disruptions. We're still building, we're still adding staff. We actually added 3 in-school suspension supervisors at our 3 elementary buildings this year as an in-house kind of a mini alternative placement alternative to kids getting placed out of the school district so they
Sure.
can get a better continuity of learning here, even when they are in the midst of a disciplinary situation. So I would not disagree with the statement that there are disruptions. I do think, and some systems are more broken than others.
Now,
Uh,
there was a caveat behind the brokenness. I said it's not the humans on the inside that are broken. It's the systems and processes and regulatory systems and some of the things that are beyond our control. What we can influence, we're doing marvelous work, but it's the system stuff that we really don't have the locus of control over.
when it's interesting because the old superintendent preparation programs were all aligned to the ELCC standards,
Correct.
Educational Leadership Constituent Consortium. And the standard number 6 is the larger political and legal and social context. So the first 5 standards are all internal things:
Right.
vision and mission, instruction, operations, safety, ethics, all that type, family engagement, all that type of thing. So I would say those first 5 core areas, we're really still doing an excellent job. And it's that 6th one we don't have control over. And it's that one that is being disrupted. And I can tell you, we dealt with an issue last year where the Cook County Board of Commissioners passed a paid leave ordinance that was going to grant a substantial additional number of unplanned paid benefit days to groups of our employees that hadn't been negotiated, that hadn't been discussed. And this was a big thing in Illinois and a big thing in Cook County because a lot of school districts struggled with that external political agency basically saying, you now have to do this. It hasn't been budgeted. We're not giving you any more money for it, but now you have to figure it out. And that would have severely affected staffing. You know, when you've got already a staff shortage and a sub shortage, and now all of a sudden all of your employees get an additional bank of vacation days and they're not going to be here, that's going to affect the kids. You know, so we actually worked with our local village to pass an ordinance, a local ordinance that exempted us from the county board ordinance.
Sounds like martial arts. It sounds like some redirecting was happening there, Doc.
You could absolutely say it was. Yep. But you know what? Our employees still get a great number of benefit days through their negotiated agreements. They're still in great shape. Our kids are in great shape. It just didn't grant that extra piece that we hadn't accounted for.
Okay, one more, because you are the professor. You're married to the professor as well, but I've always considered you somebody that is just deeply cerebral about the work of education, and it's there's a level of brilliance that you bring to the game. So, a bold prediction: 10 years from now, okay, the conventional wisdom that we have in our system right now about public education, what of that will be completely irrelevant in 10 years?
Well, I can tell you that last night, the board passed a new policy, the first policy written by the Illinois Association of School Boards regarding artificial intelligence.
Mm,
And if there's really anything that is going to change the game and change the landscape of this in an incredibly substantial way, it's probably going to be AI or something like it. And I stood up in front of my staff on Monday and said, you know, I've seen things that say AI is predicted to be as intelligent as the human brain by 2029. That's not 10 years. That's 3 to 4 years
right.
from now. And, you know, there's talk about will AI replace teachers, or will it be utilized for instruction in some capacity? Because some districts, when they can't fill vacancies, we now have districts resorting to virtual teachers. So is this going to become more and more
for real? These are like bots that are teaching students.
I think it's anywhere from something like that to like what we did during COVID, where the kids are in a classroom and they're supervised by maybe a non-certified staff member for support, and then the teacher is like the Wizard of Oz up on a screen.
Scotty, yeah.
Yeah. So will that type of thing become more commonplace? It might, but on the other side of the coin, can you really replace the effectiveness of a pedagogically strong faculty member who really knows the art of teaching? And that's where that creative piece is going to kind of come back, is not necessarily the pedagogical science of teaching, but the art of teaching, that being present with the kids, being able to improvise, to adapt lessons, to differentiate, to make relationships with kids. And I told this to my staff on Monday this was my concluding remarks to them when we started the school year. I said, teaching is now more important than ever. It is more important now to support teachers and the art of teaching and the art of in-person engagement with kids as all of this stuff is coming about. So it is absolutely, if you look holistically at the landscape of education, it is absolutely going to change districts, because it already is. The ones that are hit the hardest, and this is where some of the research I think is really going to have to identify these inequities and concerns. It probably will be the districts that are of the lowest socioeconomic status, who serve the students with the greatest needs, probably districts that are in disadvantaged areas, maybe districts that have high minority populations, that are going to resort to this, because those are the ones right now that are having the hardest time filling some of those vacancies.
Right.
Or, like in Illinois, for example, your rural districts, that don't have the population density to have the property tax base to support the higher salaries and benefits and things that will draw teachers physically to those districts. And so, where is that going to go? I'm not sure, but it's going to be interesting to see where that intersection of in-person versus virtual versus AI schooling takes shape over the next, let's say, the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I'm not going to get myself into political problems here because the show is kind of an independent thing sitting out here. But AI in education and the fact that our planet is just warming up beyond what we can handle right now. Those are the two most fascinating things that I'm just keeping my eyes on. To say it's changing lots of stuff in a hurry. And if we're just caught blinded by either of those, there's going to be, if we don't stay on the leading edge of it, right? I'm writing an article right now that's called "The Great Sort," and it's disruptive to say the least. Yeah, I should probably have you edit it before it goes out, but it really is. The great sort is good. It's going to ensure that we have the right people in education that have always been there for the right reasons, and it'll sort out the people that got into education for the wrong reasons.
Hmm.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. 30 seconds or less. We got somebody out there that doesn't quite have as many reps as you, Doc, right? They're wanting to lead big things. They want to transform. They've got the zeal to be a part of this whole momentous movement of public education, but they're 10 years younger professionally, and they need a little pep talk today. What encouragement would you give that young leader that has that aspiration to do many of the things that you're touching today? What would you share with them?
So I'm going to actually respond to that by highlighting something that's in the actual space that I'm in right now.
Let's go.
So
You've
I'm
got
in
an
our
image.
school boardroom, and behind me on this side is a painting. And that's a painting that was completed by Sam Glenn. He is a motivational speaker and an artist. And that is a wolf that he took the theme of that from the Jungle Book. And in the Jungle Book, there is a line that says, "The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack." And he gave a keynote to my staff on March 12th of 2025 and talked about this and then painted that live for us.
Oh my
And it now
goodness.
sits in our boardroom. But the reason he emphasized that is because you have to be strong individually, but you cannot succeed and do the job at your highest level of effectiveness alone. And so if you think about a wolf, a wolf is an impressive animal, all on its own. If you were to just walk outside right now and see one, you would be probably very scared, but also kind of impressed. But together is where their strength really shines. So for somebody coming up in the profession, networking is extremely important. Mentoring is extremely important. Making the connections with the right people. I feel very fortunate to have made this connection with you and the work that you've done with my district and kind of helping my leadership team develop. And it's interesting, Joe, the work you did here was both individual and collective administrative development. You met with every one of them individually and helped them identify their leadership characteristics and personality traits, but you also engaged the whole team. And so that is, I think, that individual and collective development of somebody as they're looking to move up, those are crucial. When it came to the job that I have now, I feel very fortunate to be here, but I tell people sometimes, I actually didn't apply for this job originally. I was actually identified by someone who knew my skill set and knew my work and suggested that I consider putting myself in for this position. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I am very happy with how this has, changed my life and my professional work and everything for the better. And I wouldn't be the person, all those things that you talked about over the course of this interview, if that hadn't happened. So you have to make those connections. This is a relational business. You have to be pedagogically strong. You have to be strategic. You have to be forward thinking. You have to be all of those technical things, but you have to have those relational pieces too. And I think those right now, like having those anchors and those people that can kind of help support you and grow you, that's more important than ever for somebody coming up.
That is, what do they say in music? That's at the very end, kind of the great uprising of, getting everybody's, what is that on a music score?
Well, it could be the grand finale. It could
There's a
be,
grand finale.
the yeah.
A crescendo coming
Oh yeah,
in.
yeah.
There it is. There it is. So the lesson today, folks, and we've been this was so generous today. We got to stop managing problems because that, that's that's not what we're called to do. There's crisis out there that you have to manage, but the problems you got to start systematically transforming your systems to address the problem. So this is a leader worth following, folks, and you're going to want to just track ISD 158, or how do they find you on the web?
D158.net.
Okay, yeah, check that out. Check that out. They're on the grow, and this is the show where we discovered that the best leaders don't just have good intentions. We all have those, right? They build the infrastructure to make the good outcomes inevitable. Peace, friends. Thank you again, Dr. Schilling.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it.